Howdy. Tonight, in my latest series of survival podcasts, I want to talk about warmth, heat. Um, Warmth is one of those essential survival things that you need. And from my own experience, for the last 30, 40 years, I've been cutting my own turf. There isn't a single summer that I can't remember where I wasn't footing turf and saving turf and bringing the turf home. Um, for me, it's a very cost effective situation because my bog is less than a kilometre away and it doesn't cost to get a turf to get it cut. And for me, every summer it's a routine. For me, it's a routine. I last summer I cut the turf back in late May. Within a week of it being cut, it was still very dry weather. I was able to turn it once. About a week after that, I was able to turn it a second time, and about a week after that, I was able to foot it, which is basically stand it up on its ends, and then finally, around July, August, I was able to start bringing it home. And then when I brought it home, I put it into a big stack in the field, and I covered it over with tarpaulin, and that turf will be reasonably dry, very dry, and low in moisture content when I take it to the fire during the winter. Just a point to note: when I get the turf out of the wet field, as they say, you bring it up and you leave it beside your stove, and the stove dries it out even further. And after about 24 hours, that turf sod, there's very little moisture in it, and so when it goes to burn, you see barely any smoke at all. When it comes to smoke, smoky chimney is basically a dirty chimney. You have to clean that chimney at least twice a year. Otherwise, what you'll have burnouts where the ash inside the chimney ignites, and it's a little alarming to see the smoke coming out of your chimney at that in those situations. But all I do is I shut down the fire, which you just shut down the air circulation at the bottom of the chimney, and that'll burn itself out. That being said, when it comes to fireplaces, I used to have fireplaces, but now I have stoves. They're just a metal box at the bottom of the chimney, connected to the chimney. It's also connected to my radiators as well. There's a water tank at the back of it that's heated. That basically means that I have hot water every time I keep the fire on. Those stoves are very, very efficient. They work on a kind of a rocket principle, in that when you open, there's little gates that allow air to go up into the chimney. There's a little gate at the bottom underneath to allow the air to rush into it, and by controlling the airflow up into through your stove, you can create ignition. And in the morning, like, you'd have only embers. It wouldn't even look like a fire, but all you have to do is put a couple of sods on top of those embers, open the bottom, and if it's a relatively dry evening or a dry morning, that fire will just spark up, ignite, and be roaring within less than 30 seconds. And if it's a wet morning, it takes a little bit longer, but it does fire up, and that way you get a consistent heat throughout the day. Again, you don't have a big roaring fire going all day long, because what happens there is those stoves, they might be made of cast iron, but they do weaken. The metal does weaken over time, and if you keep having a 300 to 400 degree burn day in, day out, or very, very regularly, and then it goes cold, and then you do another big burn, what you're doing is you're causing contraction and expansion, and that's not good for the water plumbing that's behind it. Normally it's your water tank that would be the issue, because the metal has to be solid enough to withstand the fire, but it also has to be light enough so that the heat conducts into the tank to heat the water faster and efficiently. So naturally enough, I've had it before. After about 7 years of burning in the stove, I was raking out the embers one day, and the next thing I could hear a trickle of water coming out of the tank. Um, that could have been very messy, but fortunately I knew where to switch off the water at the top. I had to go up into the attic. There was a little valve in the attic where I had to switch it off up there, and basically I had to hold a couple of buckets underneath the ash pan to collect all that sooty black water out of it. But apart from that, it means I have hot water all the time, and I have a warm house because of it as well. I wouldn't argue that everybody goes out and cuts turf, because obviously we have climate change issues. But furthermore, there's also the hope there that the technology, where we are coming to a point where we will have technology for limitless and clean energy, in the form of electricity and cold fusion, hopefully. But we're not quite there yet, and we are still dependent on dictators who control the oil and gas. So it's a good alternative to have, and it's a good discipline to know. So that's all I have to say. Take care.